JCU インサイトのお時間です。こちらの動画はオーストラリアの国際安全保障の専門家が台湾を失い、中国と戦争になる可能性について語ります。また戦争になった場合、台湾海峡でアメリカ海軍が中国海軍に勝てるかどうかについても話します。日米豪は中国の軍事的脅威の真実を認めなければならないでしょう。平和ボケをなくすためにもぜひ SNS でシェアしてください。
No, I mean China is the nation that is behaving extremely aggressively, extremely provocatively, and projecting its force outside its sea lanes. And you look at this. 2 days ago, you saw President Xi at a big show and tell for the Australian Navy. The Chinese Navy down there in Sanyan province, and they've been building up this blue water naval fleet for some time. It's quite formidable. What are they going to do? What are they going to do with it except project their power outside? And obviously, Taiwan is in their sights.
Yeah, Alan, you've written extensively about China and emerging challenges across the Indo-Pacific. In your eyes, how likely is a conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan?
Well, it's certainly a lot more likely than it was 5 years ago. When people ask me that question, I usually say it's probably gone from about 0.5% to probably about 25% now, which is a substantial increase. So the risk has clearly gone up. It's not a beat up, it's a real problem. And then there are two reasons for that. One, politically, President Xi Jinping has determined that this is his highest priority. He's 68 years old. So he's probably got the best part of 10 years to bring about the reunification of Taiwan by force if necessary. And he's on the record as having said that. And secondly, the balance of military power has shifted quite significantly towards China in that part of the world. And it's doubtful now whether the United States could rescue Taiwan as it's done in the past. Because the Chinese have got such batteries of missiles there, it would be high risk for the US to do that. So they're the two most important changes over the last 10 or 20 years.
And if we don't stand with Taiwan, we can't expect China to stop there, can we, Nick? That would set quite a precedent if we all stand by and allow them to march into Taiwan.
Well, that's right. It's sort of, who's going to be the last one to be eaten by the tiger? I mean, we saw in Hong Kong last year, they blatantly went in breach of the agreement they stuck with the UK, moved in, basically taken the place over. Taiwan is obviously high on their list, but what then? You can see the way they're trying to get influence in the Pacific on sort of bankrupt governments like in the Pacific and the Victorian government. They've come in with this Belt and Road project, which is clearly a way of trying to shackle them to debt. China is behaving extremely aggressively, not like a reasonable partner at all. And it's no use us responding in a reasonable way if China's going to behave like that.
Now, Alan, we saw reports today of Xi Jinping launching 3 new warships, including a guided missile cruiser with stealth technology. Do Western nations and the Biden administration in particular have the military muscle to effectively deter China at sea?
Well, there's a big question mark over that. I might surprise a lot of your listeners to know that the Chinese submarine fleet, for example, is now the largest in the world. And the problem for the United States is that if you look at it globally, the US still probably outmuscles China militarily. But if you just look in the Taiwan Strait and the area off the Chinese coast, the US would have a lot of problems supporting Taiwan, as I said previously, because China has built up a very formidable fleet as well as land-based missiles. So as I said, the balance of power has shifted very much towards China in that part of the world. And so the US is now having to look at alternative strategies for helping Taiwan defend itself. And policymakers in Canberra are having a lot of thinking about what Australia might do if there is a conflict there. Would we send our own ships and aircraft to support the US? Would we stand back a bit and perhaps provide some surveillance aircraft? These are the questions that the Morrison government is now wrestling with. And it's a very complex situation because a lot depends on how the conflict plays out. I don't think the Chinese would just carry out a full-scale invasion straight away. They would probably seek to pressure Taiwan economically, maybe cyber attacks. Those sorts of attacks are much more difficult to deal with because they're not clear-cut cases of aggression always. You know, a cyber attack is always deniable. And so it's a much more complex situation for Australia to come to grips with. It's not just about sending our ships or aircraft there. We have to think a bit more in a more nuanced way about how we would respond in obviously collaboration with our friends and allies, including Japan.